here has volunteered their time to be here to share their expertise with everyone, so we're very grateful that you guys are here. Thank you. So, I guess it is basically, yeah, it's right on 12:30. So, what I'm going to do is we're going to start with a quick video that our department, in collaboration with Vika and some active learning faculty members that have done a fabulous job, have put together, that's on the EASL website. So, we're going to pull that up and play that while you eat a little bit. And then after that, we'll have you guys introduce yourselves, your departments, and kind of the classes that you're teaching that are active learning. And then we'll move on from there. The process for this whole wonderful little program is a discussion. So feel free to ask questions, throw things at them, words, not literal things. No water bottles flying at you. And just have a wonderful discussion. We are here until 2. You are free to leave if you so need to, if you have other things that occupy your time. We will not chain the doors and lock you in, even though it's exciting. And Lynn, you're welcome to come and sit next to your buddy. And you are also welcome to still get food. So don't miss out on it.
Great.
The Incubator Classroom is a way of bringing technology and content together. And so how it's changed my teaching is that I've tried to flip the classroom this year. With flipping the classroom, it means putting all the content online, having the students come in prepared for the lesson of the day, and then actually applying what we're learning that day. To have color put back into a classroom provokes imagination, and in turn provokes that conversation and that collaboration.
So I think just the environment itself makes students feel more relaxed. They usually say, this is a break from my traditional class.
When I think about this current generation of students, they are already carrying around devices that give them that instant access to the internet. And so this model of teaching students facts and memorizable components, but I don't see the need now. We're going to have this world of information. So obviously what we need to do is, first of all, to teach people how to discriminate amongst all this sea of information, but then we need to teach them how to apply it. And I think that's the advantage this classroom format and this kind of teaching has over traditional, is that we've reached a point now where the information is just there anyway. You don't have to memorize it or familiarize yourself with it overly much, but you do need to learn how to process it and apply it. I think that's of more benefit to the students and ultimately more benefit, to us as a society.
I prefer the incubator class because the atmosphere is just so much more laid back, to where when I walk in, I'm not stressed out at all. I'm actually learning because I want to learn, and not in this uniformed environment that I'm just panicking, like, oh my gosh, if I don't take notes, I'm going to fail. Here it's just like, it's fun. Yeah. Right, and I'm not that technologically advanced. I'm very whoa, technology. And so it's user-friendly even for people who, they don't use technology all the time. It's really quick to get.
It's really valuable for group work, which I like as an education major because it's things I can take back into my own professional life.
I prefer this way more. I don't feel like I'm being talked to. I feel like I'm being included in the teaching and in the learning.
Students don't want to be sat in a classroom for 8 hours with a pen and paper and be lectured to. So this is just a new approach to teaching that I'm in favor of.
It's actually changed the way I've taught incredibly so, more so than I had thought. And because you have to take what you traditionally do in the classroom and flip it on its heels. So you'll get more confidence actually working as a team and seeing that teamwork can actually yield something fruitful. I think oftentimes students worry that other students in the class won't pull their weight, and now they're having an opportunity to see that other people are just as engaged as they are.
If you're looking at the skills that they need for the job market, one of the biggest ones is collaboration and how we translate that into both written communication and oral communication.
First looking around, it makes you excited to be in there. So, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way as LaToya. This is really different, especially for us math people. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of it gives you something to look forward to in the middle of the week. And just it's a fun class to be in. We're learning a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so that was a little introduction as to what some of this is all about, for those of you that are just trying to get your feet wet. So we're gonna let you guys go ahead and do, again, introductions of who our experts that are telling all are. And then again, like just what department and kind of what courses you teach. So, you wanna start on that end?
Either way is fine.
We'll start over there.
Since I'm finished chewing.
Yes.
I'm Emily Friedman. I'm an associate professor in the Department of English. My job kind of requirements are that I teach a large format, which is to say lecture course once every year, and then graduate and upper division courses in the opposite semester. I've taught in the EASL classroom, I think 3 times at this point. I was one of the first folks to move into the EASL classroom for upper division courses. I do project-based teaching. The joke among English professors when you talk about flipping the classroom is, oh wait, students are expected to prepare all the material ahead of time and do something with it in the classroom. Oh right, we do that. So for us, I think there's a natural progression, but then I think what Lindsay and I are both going to talk about is how to make that even more active. And for me, that's about creating high stakes, semester-wide experiences with the knowledge that they're learning. So that's what I'm going to be talking about later today.
Okay, Anna Frankel-Watkins in psychology, associate professor. My specialty is decision making, and I do undergrad upper level classes in the EASL classroom. I've taught behavioral game theory 4 times in there, and we'll be flipping one of my regular decision-making courses to the EASL in the fall and the spring. And I do a scaffolding project based learning as well, which is team-based. And we talk about, I can talk about some ways to deal with evaluating the team and avoiding free ridership when in team-based approach in active learning.
I'm Regina Gravy-Jackson. I am the pre-calculus coordinator in the mathematics department, and so I teach a lot of large lecture freshman level courses. I will talk about inquiry-based learning and the use of iPads in the classroom. And inquiry-based is basically, instead of lecturing, the students answer questions. It's kind of like a flipped classroom on steroids. So they answer questions and then they come and discuss their answers to the questions, and we build the class from there. We did a couple of projects, and this is from classes the size of 20 to the size of 200.
And I am Lindsay Dukopoulos. I'm also in the English department, and I'm a lecturer, so I teach a wide range of classes. And some of the active learning classes that I've been teaching this year are smaller 25 student classes in composition, so writing and research. I'm teaching right now a large lecture class as an active learning course in literature, and I've done an upper division creative writing workshop as active learning too. So done a lot of different kinds of classes with a lot of different kinds of students. And I think the younger students, at least in my experience, are the ones who seem to, at least quantitatively, I think, benefit the most from the active learning. The older students kind of already know how to be students, and I think one of the great things about the active learning is that it really gets them thinking about their education rather than just passing a single class. So I really like that aspect of it.
I'm Ameya Kolarkar, and I'm a lecturer who does not lecture in the physics department. And once again, I find myself as the only male on the panel. So I teach freshmen basically large classes, and we distinguish them into algebra-based and calculus-based. Although the physics is the same, things are different. And we have to deal with a special issue that I think most here do not have to deal with, and that's student resistance. Students don't want to be in physics. They don't know why they need physics. They are scared of physics, and so that's one aspect that we need to get over. And so I teach large classes with the help of learning assistants. We'll talk about that some more. And also trying to do active, we do active everywhere in the small EASL classrooms and in the big 250 student lecture halls. And I'm taking some of that elements to graduate course also, so I'm kind of helping a colleague activating the graduate course. And what else? So I do weird things. So weird things just to get the fear out of the students' minds. It's called AFP, alleviating the fear of physics. And when those things are successful, I take it out to others. And I think I literally collaborate with everyone on this panel, except Anna, but I collaborate with your colleague from your department.
You do.
So,
He doesn't like me, but he at least likes someone.
just do it. So yeah.
I'm Lynn Middletort from the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. Similar to Amaya, a lecturer charged with teaching mostly these large enrollment classes of freshman level students, a little bit of upper level once in a while. I've also taught our honors curriculum, which is smaller classrooms, still freshmen. And I've done our laboratories, and Amaya and I collaborate on this learning assistant pedagogy course, which is fun. And yeah, it's more about just trying to change the way that our students see chemistry and getting them to use it as a way of thinking and not a list of things to do. So just trying to make them be more active in the classroom setting in a large lecture hall or in an easel kind of room. So trying to make it agnostic to the type of space.
And just to make Amaya feel better, we did have another male faculty member who couldn't come, and we have one that's swapping out. Anna has to leave and one that's coming late. And he will make a second one. So there will be more.
So I'm not feeling bad.
I'm very flexible.
Okay, so what we'd like to do first is, do you guys have any questions that you specifically want to know, that you're just aching to have ideas about, that you would just like to ask the panel right off the start?
I've not heard of the easel spaces or classrooms. Where are they and how do you have access to them as an instructor?
Good question.
I would love to have Vipka take that.
Okay, so Vipka's in charge of.
I'm in charge of them. So there are two right now on campus that are specifically designated as EASL spaces. EASL stands for Engaged and Active Student Learning. We have one in Haley Center, 2213, that seats 45 students. That was the one that you saw in the video. And then one that is a year younger is in Science Center Classroom Building 118, which seats 72 students. The way that scheduling works for those classrooms is that it's tightly controlled. I take care of that. I ask people to write me proposals a good year ahead of teaching. So in December was the deadline to teach for fall 2016 and spring 2017. So that I have enough flexibility to get as many people into the space as possible. The one in Haley Center is primarily, but not exclusively, used by liberal arts classes. We also have education and engineering, and one agriculture at some point was brave enough to march all the way over to Haley. COSAM is almost exclusively sciences and mathematics. So if you're interested in that, talk to me. There are also a couple of movements across campus and some of the colleges to redesign, rethink the way learning spaces are being put together. And so we're trying to get involved in those rethinkings as well, so that we're not doing same old, but get something together where the students really can engage with the content.
Just a follow-up question about the size of the class. We talked about one is about 45 students to understand. So the graduate student class in physics is about 10-15 students. And do we have a lower priority because of the small size?
Do you have lower priority?
I mean,
it depends on the time of day. I have quite a few small classes in the larger space, but that's because they are late in the afternoon when those large classes no longer meet.
I see. But we have a graduate TA, they have to teach in the afternoon, so we typically schedule in the morning. But those are the rush hours sometimes, right?
But it also tends to be easier to turn smaller spaces into active learning spaces that are successful rather than the big ones. So what we might just need to do is figure out what kind of physics spaces are available on the small scale that we can turn into something like this.
Are we still doing the EASL to go?
EASL to go. The deadline for the EASL to go pre-proposals was January 15th, so that window has closed. but some of your departments actually put proposals into that. I don't remember if physics is one of them.
No.
I know biology. Okay.
Chemistry.
Chemistry did it,
Psychology.
biology, psychology did it.
Would you explain?
Put something on
Okay.
the
So, you noticed the big pile of mud outside the library? Yes? Okay. If not, you might want to, when you leave here, walk by there. So what's happening there is that we're building a new classroom building. And a lot of the spaces in that new classroom building will be either full easel spaces, so decked out with the technology, not just with the collaborative furniture, but also, and then what we call easel light, so collaborative furniture and erasable, writable spaces all around the walls. In order for us to get faculties ready to teach in that space when it opens its doors fall 2017, we are building mobile easel-to-go learning spaces across campus. These spaces are very expensive, but we can, with some minimal funding, introduce mobile whiteboards so that we don't have to worry about asbestos abatement, mobile technology so that we don't have to worry about drilling holes in the wall, those types of things. And maybe with some departmental funding, mobile furniture on a smaller scale so that those departments can have the space to learn how to do this. So when we have the big classroom building opening up, you guys know what to do inside of it. So easel-to-go is limited to mobile so that you can take it potentially from one space to another, that you're not limited to one particular classroom. Does that answer your question?
I put an image of my easel-to-go proposal up. This is for a Haley Center classroom, so without changing any of the old desks and everything, we collaborated with one of the classroom designers, Anna Ruth, and she was suggesting painting floor circles and having color-coded boards around the room and backpack hooks to get the stuff out of the way. So although you don't have more floor space, you can maximize the space you have. She had some other suggestions too. So this is a way to turn a room on a smaller budget into something that you can do a lot of active learning stuff with. And I think all of the classrooms, I don't know, one of the great things about active learning that I'm discovering is that, it's really about the design of the activity rather than the space itself, and I think there are ways to turn any classroom into an active classroom. So I can pull up another picture. I'm teaching in a really terrible lecture hall that's like a movie theater audience. There's aisles on the side, and just all the students are supposed to be crammed together. But I've got, let's see if I can find it here. Whiteboards up around the room so that they can, I'm using team-based learning, and I send teams to the board halfway through the lecture, so I don't just talk for 50 minutes uninterrupted. I talk for 50 minutes and then I have them apply a concept as a team, take a picture of it, bring it back to class, or do something out of the classroom with it. So I'll find that picture. But sorry, I was saying.
It's on Facebook.
Yeah.
So,
Are there other burning questions?
I just noticed you use AirPlay here, right? So do we need to set up anything special to local network to use AirPlay?
You have to have an Apple TV, but other than that,
You have to have an Apple TV, and you need to be on the Aruba network so that you can connect the Apple TV to the AU Open network.
AU Open network?
Yes.
Last time I talked to Bliss Billy, my impression OIT doesn't like Apple stuff.
CLAIT does.
So
No, I think Bliss has seen the light. I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, so if we have a Apple TV hookup, this one, so just with the login to the open network.
It has to have Aruba wireless in the building.
So you just need to double check that. A lot of the buildings do.
Okay.
You just need to find out if
How
yours
to
does.
To feel forest.
Doesn't Vigio have a list of what rooms are available right now that are capable?
Yeah, yes, there is a list. Physics, remind me, which building would you be living in?
Allison for now.
Yeah, not so sure about that one.
All right, so what do we need to do to get access?
I would say talk with Phil to see what is available to get everyone into the building. But because of what you know is going to happen to Allison, I'm not sure how likely that is.
Okay.
I think Mike Fogel got his own Apple TV and did some stuff and was able to make it work in a specific room, but that's about the extent of it.
I get a feeling that's kind of like a jailbreak, something like that. Not officially okay.
It's his own solution.
I had students in my regular decision-making class have iPads last semester, and we didn't have Apple TVs. It was a regular classroom, and we made things work really well. We changed it from having PowerPoint presentations where they all stand there and are all nervous and can't present very well, especially when they're just starting to doing video-based presentations and to applying a concept from in class in the real world and sampling, and it worked out really, really well. So you could, although it would be ideal to have Apple TVs and different elements even within the regular classroom, you can do it. And another thing that I found that I used iPads for was to actually, instead of Scantrons, I did all my exams on Qualtrics, so it's easily scored. The students all took it on their iPad with a link. You could password protect it until it's time, and after they do it, you close out the link, and all the grades were inputted back up into Canvas within an hour. So it saves you Scantron time, it saves the universe from more papers and pencils being implemented. So there are different little techniques just to improve the efficiency with what you have.
And I've done the same thing. You're physics, right? Yeah. I've done the same thing with WebAssign. So you can do password protecting, and I've had them do it on their laptops or their iPads. And I have one classroom in the easel, but most of my classrooms are in Parker. So we still do things, we use the projector, I'll put up things on the projector, but we talk a lot. And I've hung, there are some classrooms that have boards around that they can write on the boards, but there's other ones where we've just taken one of those big white tablets of paper and just stuck them on the board, on the walls, and let them write on there. So there's a lot of ways you can go old school. You don't have to have this part to do it.
You mentioned you use iPad in teach calculus, right?
Pre-calculus.
Pre-calculus. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, basically, what I've done is there's this movement that's actually been large. Inquiry-based learning came about in the 1950s through topology, a math discipline. So basically, a lot of them don't think that it's capable to be done with pre-calculus level. There's been a large movement to do it in the K through 12, and a lot of the upper level classes do the same type thing. So I focused on the pre-calculus and the freshman level students. So basically what I had is I had an easel classroom. We took a pre-calculus algebra class and built projects for them to do. So everything they had, we basically used the iPads as a displaying and an organizational tool because it was already going to be kind of chaotic. And so all of their notes were on Canvas and downloadable from Canvas. If they were presenting the questions that they had answered, they could put them up on the boards. They worked in groups, and they would normally use their TV as a way for everyone to see at the same time. Used a little bit of GeoGebra, which is a free tool to build applets for them to interact with. And about the only thing that I found is it was great. I could do everything that we did with it without it. But it did make it nice to have everything in one compact place and go paperless. But I did find that with that internet capability right there, I can expect them to not look stuff up. So my first semester teaching with it, I was, hardcore Moore method, which is a very strict inquiry-based type way, and said, you only talk to your group and me. And people were looking at their high school notes on their
They're being
iPad.
resourceful.
They were, and they were looking things up, and I finally said, just be able to defend whatever you find. And it seems to be working well.
I like that term, defend whatever you find.
defend whatever you find.
Do you want to talk about the picture quick now that you have
Oh,
that?
yeah, this is the classroom I'm teaching in now, so it is not at all conducive to active learning, but we have put up these writable surfaces, which are, Post-it makes them, they're about $40 a piece, so they're not super cheap, but we're duct taping them up to the wall, so hopefully they'll last through the semester. But we're able to put them up around the room, and then with teams, they can go and have somebody write, have somebody erase, and collaborate. Some of them, prefer to stay seated and look things up in the book, but others are getting up and standing up. And for the most part, it's really helping the discussions to move a lot more quickly. So then when they sit down, I can pull up a slide with, consider fate versus free will and Sophocles. And they'll start talking. There won't be that long sort of cricket moment where they're like, do we really have to talk to each other? So it really speeds up and makes us use more fully the 50 minutes that we have twice a week for this lecture, which is great. I think the energy is much better. And based on a colleague observing me the other day, she said she only saw one person on Facebook at the back of the room. Of course, she was sitting next to that person, but she said everybody else was taking notes and really engaged. So this is my first time teaching it, so that was good feedback, I thought.
So we did this exact same thing in honors physics also, the person delving into active learning for the first time. And so the students went up there, nobody was on Facebook, and they were all, again, the problem was the math. And they just stood there, okay, we know the physics, what do we do with the math? And so that was kind of a stumbling block, but then explain the math again, let's go again, get stuck again, do the same thing. So we did that in a similar room, but one of the the worst room possibly on campus. Still worked.
And I think one of the keys with active learning, when they're actively engaged, they're not distracted by Facebook and their phones and texting. I mean, students had iPads and I rarely caught them doing other things. Or if so that I think that's the key, because they're going to use their devices no matter what. So if you can incorporate the use of a device into the classroom and make it allowable, that changes the context. So the device is now for learning and not for a distraction from learning. And most of them have their own devices. It's nice if the whole class can have iPads and things of that sort, but even some of the active, the EASL classroom, the students come in with their own devices for the most part. And we have about 4 computers that are in the storage so that the team could share, but they have all different ways of accessing it. So it's very common that they'll come with their own device and prefer it a lot of times.
Are there any other markers of engagement? I like what you said about Facebook. There were no students on Facebook or other disengaging behavior in the class. Are there other things that you've noticed in your teaching as you implemented either the EASL classes or the large lecture classes that are for you markers of engagement that tell you that the students are really getting in based on the intervention you design, based on the new things that you implement or introduce in your classes?
Our students, especially in the EASL classroom, I've never been the first person to get to class and start working. They're there, working on their stuff. They're not playing, so they're taking advantage of the full range of the time that they have access to that room to do what they're doing. A lot of what I'm doing is project-based, and thus there's an outcome at the end of it. I did this before EASL, I did this before I moved a lot of that work into the space of classroom time. The outputs were very different. Our students have a lot on their plates. Even the most dedicated ones, and perhaps especially the most dedicated ones, are double majors, are in charge of 5 million things, their CVs are crazy. To reappropriate class time as saying that the work, you're actively doing work towards the final outcome has radically changed how much time they can spend together, working together. So I think just the fact that they're there and they're constantly humming, not just that they're not on Facebook while they're in the class, but they're always beating me to class no matter how early I show up.
I think I told Vivka this story of the first time I was doing active learning the EASL classroom. I started class 10 minutes early because I thought everybody was there. But I actually didn't realize it was 10 minutes early. I thought I was on time. 2 students then came in on time, and I reprimanded them for being early. And they said, no, we're actually on time, and I was really embarrassed. But 30 other students just went ahead with it. No one said, hey, it's still 10 minutes, I have other things to do. So that's a level, I guess, of engagement that they're willing just to start early. But most of the time it's actually how much laughter and fun, and like they'll often say, I'm learning a lot, but this is fun. Like there's something wrong with this approach because I'm actually enjoying this. So the level of activity, the volume in the classroom is larger. The energies, as someone discussed, is just heightened. So that's when you can tell that they're engaged as well.
I think for me in my classes it comes out a little bit different. He was talking about they don't know the math. They come in and not only are they thinking, well, there's something different about this, but they're mad at me at first because I'm not doing what their high school math teacher did. I'm not standing at the board and telling them everything. And I will get angry emails for like the first month of, where am I supposed to find this information? You didn't tell us the answers. How am I supposed to know the answers? And after they actually sit down and start doing the questions themselves, instead of just waiting for me to tell them the answers to it, a lot of them will come in and say, well, I never knew what that meant. That makes a lot more sense now. And so there's that, and then also the fact that they're coming in without any sort of idea on how to study mathematical concepts at all. And so they think that they just need to do more practice homework problems, even if they have no idea how to do it to begin with. And so basically a lot of this trying to figure out what they know and have them use that bit of information to build what they need to know, they don't realize that that's learning. And you hear a lot of the times I'm teaching myself when I find that as a compliment. It's what you're supposed to be doing.
And also to finish that up, they don't typically realize that the class is over. They typically go over
They
time
start early and don't want to leave.
Until they're kicked out.
Yeah.
For those instructors that have large classes, because I teach a large lecture class, can you talk about specifically some of the activities that you do and how you manage those activities? Do you guys have TAs as well that you work with in class? And
Yeah, I have 4 GTAs, so I've kind of broken the class into quadrants, but some of the specific things I do, especially if you're doing any kind of group work, is give them a really specific task, not discuss this, without any kind of context or prepping. And I think, I just saw on my Facebook feed the other day, somebody posted like 15 new ways to engage discussions and like bring up the level of discussion. So one of the tried and tested ones is think, pair, share, where you ask them to write down the answer themselves, you ask them to share with a friend, and then, well, pair with a friend, and then share with the bigger group. And the level of discussion just is astronomically better than if you simply ask them to, riff on an idea or a concept from the class. And there are a lot of like really specific, I can't remember all of them, but Socratic conversations and stuff like that, which can help generate productive classroom activity instead of just, learning with activity, not just activity for its own sake, which I think is something to watch out for.
When you were originally switching your class from a lecture to an active learning class, how did you go about that process?
For me?
I'm at it, everyone.
Lots of planning.
Okay.
Lots of planning.
Lots of planning.
It is a lot of work to start an active learning class, but it's a lot of work to start any class. If you have to start a new lecture, it's a lot of work. So it's considered a new prep, and I think so. You just have to rethink what is learning, what the outcomes are. How do you want to assess that? I know I do a take-home exam, which is actually harder for them. They think it's good, but it's just because they have to provide examples and apply the concepts, so they can't Google it or they have to relate it to their own life. So I had to rethink, like, I can't do a traditional multiple choice exam when they're actively learning. So initially it's just thinking, how can I take this activity and make it into something different? Some people are much better at planning. I made stuff up on the fly. And I was so surprised that I could just come up with something and they would do it. And I kept elevating the game because initially I didn't know what my students could do. So I would try little things and then they would do it. And so I just kept elevating the game, because if you elevate the game, they rise to the occasion. And that was like the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you have to go into any course with, no matter how you're developing it, is what are the students expected to learn? Like, what do you actually want them to know when they leave? And how do you get them there? That's always the question that we ask. And so I'm a big believer. I teach in easel. I don't use half the shiny bells and whistles. I'm sorry, Vipka.
I don't get either.
No, I mean, the glass boards have changed my life, right? I use them constantly. Do my students have to be plugged in and projecting onto the big screens all the time? Hell no, that's not what we need. We need agile stuff for the tasks that we're doing on a given day. And so whenever you come into a new class, or a class that you want to make better in this kind of way, you have to ask. And for me, I'm teaching a large class that I'm going to move into further active learning in the fall. Same setup that Lindsay's talking about, 4 GTAs, 96 students, and me. And I'm thinking in terms of, I want them to be able to write, I want them to be able to do this specific kind of writing, and I want them to be able to read and understand that in history. And so it becomes diagnostic exam on the first day. It becomes in-class writing that they perform in the minutes before they arrive in class and at the beginning of class, that then gets incorporated into other kinds of activities throughout the rest of what is still a kind of hybrid lecture. I'm not gonna lie, I still do a song and dance. But there's an engagement there because of other things that we're sprinkling through. I don't know that I'm never going to be as awesome as Lindsay in terms of like the cool glassboard surrogates on the walls of my 96 student classroom. I teach in Tichenor. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that space. Mm-hmm. It has exactly 96 seats. No one's getting up and doing anything. That's just not how that room's going to play. And that's okay for me because I'm 5 rows away from any given student. I prefer that to my students being able to get up and around. But that's a choice that I make in terms of my own teaching, which means that active learning doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get up and get their blood flowing. I have to figure that out in different ways based on what I prioritize. But yeah, you do have to do some sitting down and thinking and visiting the space in which you are most often teaching and thinking about this sort of thing. I don't think any of us started doing this our first year here. I think that's true. Bless you.
So let's one additional thing to your question here. One of the most helpful things for me trying to actually transition my class was seeing it. Seeing someone else teach a class in this way, or just seeing how other people teach. This is the most informative thing because you ask, what does it look like when you teach this way? And just go look at some examples. Mm-hmm. Don't try to emulate what other people do, but just get an idea of what's possible and what's reasonable. And that's going to help more than anything.
I had the provost come to my class, so and he participated. He wasn't allowed to just observe. So I think that because that's the best way, right? You want to learn more about active learning, and the best way, so if you want to learn about active learning, come to a class and partake it. As you are a student, see what it feels like as opposed to just what the person is doing.
And do you guys maybe want to make a comment about your comfort level from when you first started doing
I was
this?
to when you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I stole this. They had a course redesign this summer, and I tell you that kind of kicked off what I was doing. I had been aware of active learning for a while, a good while. But I was scared to death. I had tried bits and pieces beforehand, but to me, it feels like chaos because everything else, when we go in, I have an idea, basically this outline in my head of exactly what I'm going to cover. I know how to look at the faces. I know that if I stare at someone long enough, they may try to answer my question, that type of thing. But this was more like, here, I'm going to give it all to you, and I'm just going to trust that you're going to do it. I'm not going to be standing over your shoulder. And I had tried a flipped classroom before, and it didn't work out so well.
Can I make a comment? Do you guys know what flipped classroom is? Does everyone have an understanding of what that means? No?
Okay, so a flipped classroom is basically where you do the content and videos, lecture type things outside of class. They watch these videos or they read certain pieces of the text that you ask them to read, maybe do a short quiz, and then they come to class and you do something active with them inside the classroom. Well, I had tried it.
You do their homework in the class,
homework's in
you
the
do the
class,
teaching
the
out of
lecture's
class.
outside of class. It didn't work out so well for me because with my 200 students, and I only get 2 TOs, they weren't doing it. They were coming in and they were still expecting me to tell them exactly what they were covering. That doesn't always happen, and it was kind of the way that I had it made, because I'm still asking them to go outside of class and do a lot of work. But now I have them show me all their work instead of just kind of scrolling through a video to find the answers real quick. They have to show everything before they even come in the classroom. But what I was going to say is what made me feel a little less apprehensive and helped me to design how I was going to do my course was we were asked to think of our learning goals. What do you want, not just the content that you want your students to learn, because we have this long list. They're going to know how to do this and this and this and this, and they don't know how to do any of it, even if they have an A. Sorry, I tried. But basically, my biggest thing I noticed was, okay, I've got 4 learning goals here, but only one of them is content. I want them to think. I want them to be independent. I want them to be confident, because they come in scared to death. And to begin with, math sucks to them. I don't like math. I can't do math. That's some sort of hidden talent. You're a magician. I can't do this. And I believe that they left. A good many of them satisfying my goals, even if it was kind of hard. But basically all the strategies and all the things that I used came from these goals. If I want them to think independently, I can't lecture to them. I have to ask them questions to make them think. If I want them to communicate what they're doing, answering some WebAssign homework questions where they just put in an answer that they've tried 6 times until they got it right is not telling me anything. They're not communicating. So, if they have to write a thought-out paragraph answer to a math question, God forbid, then they're now communicating. And to make sure that they're capable is as they do those other 2, they start to feel more capable of doing it. And the number 4 just kind of went along the way.
And I think you raise a really good point. When you start doing active learning, you have to abandon the idea all this content has to be done, because you can't do all the content and active learning at the same time, because learning takes time. So if you're willing to devote class time to having your students develop and learn, and it's gradual. The first project takes them 3 class days to do, and it's the most simplest project. The last project that they do is the 7th one. They incorporate multiple games and it takes them 2 days. So they accelerate, but it takes time, and you can't cover all the content, but it's okay, because we know in cognitive psychology anyway that they're only going to retain 10 to 15% of what the material that is covered in class, but those learning skills they'll retain forever. So I think that's sort of the key, is you have to abandon all this content is really important, I don't know what to get rid of, and focus on what are the learning goals.
Or if you're in a core level course, you have to still keep the content. Just
Right.
remember that it's there's a saying that I learned when I was a grad student. I dealt with some high school stuff, is teach smarter, not harder. So if you're covering it with an activity, there is no reason to also lecture on it. So if they're building a catapult where they're going to learn about quadratic functions, There's no reason for me to sit there and tell them how to graph a quadratic function. They just did it on their own, and they learned everything they need to know.
And I think a note about the learning goals that we want to keep in mind is that we keep them measurable. It makes it easier for them to manage what it is we're asking them to do. So can you figure out what you're asking them to do? Don't be vague, be very specific.
I think another thing is be flexible. Everything that I wanted to do, I may have tweaked after we got in the classroom, because it's like the first, right now, I'm teaching some trig classes, and I have these discussion boards. So I'm trying to do the large lecture, and I have them in smaller groups for discussion. They have to answer 1 to 10 questions in their discussion group. And I had a perfect grading rubric that I was using. This will get them talking, and then I realized it's not getting them talking. And, sorry, birthday messages. And, let's turn this off. And they're also, their grades were very low, even though they were working really hard. So I just went to class 2 days ago and said, all right, I'm gonna fix this. We're gonna change our grading scheme. It's no biggie, you know, and they're happy for it. The first time I did it, they wanted to do more of the homework type questions in class. So I put them in their question set. You know, I'm not going to show you an example. You're going to work through an example, and you can show each other. Or you have to be willing to change it to make it fit for what you need.
I can. So the question was how you went from lecture to active learning. I went from active learning to active learning, and that was a whole different adventure. So I was thrust into active learning the first time. I never taught lectures ever. And so this was in Boston University. And so I taught with the best, and so I learned from an award winner and all those things. And then I come here and I do the exact same thing here, assuming the exact same outcomes, the same results, but it flopped miserably. And then I'm thinking, what's the reason for this? And there were like situational factors, cultural differences, and so I had to take a fully different approach that worked with students here. And I think I have come up with some things that might work. So now they are working well. And Anna's gone, but the content, I just tell them now that this is the content for 1 chapter, 1 week. And whatever you cannot finish in class, you are responsible for it. And so they go and they sit in the library. They still maintain their groups, and they work the exact same way they would in class. And they get it done. So work both ways. And so Boston also we had the LAs, and so here, the first time I taught, there were no learning assistants, which we'll talk about, and my SI saw what I was doing. The SIs were not, the supplemental instructor leaders, they were not used to the active learning, so my SI left after the first week. I cannot do this, and he left, and so then the next semester we got learning assistants, so now it's working out well. So I want to talk about some learning assistant things.
Sure. Actually, I think that your question earlier, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I think the answer to your question earlier got cut pretty short. You're asking about strategies for teaching large classes in an active way. We have like suitcases full of them, okay? There are so many different strategies that we can use. So I wrote some down. Maya was talking about our learning assistants, and these are undergraduates that are trained to facilitate, pretty much to facilitate group work or to facilitate discussions, and they circulate the room in these different ratios. You guys talked about think, pair, share. We did a little bit of that. That's a really easy thing to do. It doesn't cost any money. You just get kids to turn and talk to each other. We also make use of clickers in the classroom. That's some kind of remote response where you probe students' knowledge remotely. And exchanging clickers and discussion and going back and forth between these two things is actually a really, really powerful way to get a feel for what's going on in the room, get them to be engaged in it, and then maybe re-poll and find out what the result is of that discussion. So clickers are not for taking attendance. I know some people in here should feel strongly about that. Clickers are not for taking attendance. Clickers are for engaging in the classroom. And so, are you still using clickers? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we all have our own ways of polling, whether it's with the actual clicker or with some other technology. So that was my list that I really wanted to make sure you heard. Okay.
I did the thumbs up.
Okay,
And I saw a hand back there. Is it?
Because the nature, I'm a language teacher,
And most of the classes in our program are active learning classes. I mean, it's a requirement. And I'm curious about strategies for working with other faculty who are more traditional, because we have received, as you know, not everyone appreciates the increased energy and volume that you were talking about. And so I wondered if you had strategies for helping explain to faculty who don't already participate in these strategies the literal increased volume in the classroom and movement, and maybe some ways to get around these smaller classrooms. Like, how can I like just the moving of chairs and things sometimes, I think, in Haley disturbs the people on the other side of the fabric wall.
Strategy for keeping them quiet?
No, the first one. No, really, it's more so
working with faculty.
In your experience, I would imagine, not those of you in the EASL classroom, but when you're applying these strategies in other classrooms, it does get louder, and it's just louder.
So,
and how do you manage with other faculty members who want to knock on the door because they hadn't expected to hear a voice?
Can I tell a story?
Yes, I don't have anything to this.
Let me tell you a story, Mary.
Story time with Vika.
This happened in Anna's class. So Anna Franco-Watkins class.
Oh yes.
She teaches games, and one of the projects is for the students to play out a game. And for whatever reason, one of her groups decided it would be really cool to do a sort of hostage game. In Haley Center with Nerf guns. Now, if the students had stayed inside the classroom, I don't think anything would have ever come out of this. But because, to start off the game, the students left the classroom and then came back in again, there were students in other classrooms and faculty in other classrooms who saw something. And so 911 was called. And frantic text messages were sent. And it was beautiful inside the classroom. It did exactly, it fulfilled the assignment until there was a knock on the door, and somebody dressed up as a police officer was standing outside.
And the actual police
An actual police officer. Not part of the game.
Whoa, they went all out. They got signed as a police officer. No, that's a real police officer. Somebody called 911 because of what just happened. So, this is of course an extreme situation. I think there is now something on her syllabus about let's diminish distraction to others by following certain strategies. Now, I would also say the other faculty members around you who may be complaining about noise out of the classroom, tell them you are teaching and your students are learning. And they can go somewhere else to complain. Send them to me. I will be happily dealing with those people.
There was the other related issue was we often use the Post-it notes to keep track. We teach 2 8-week terms for each 16-week semester, to keep track of things in our classroom, and they would be removed by the faculty members whose departments felt that who more regularly used those same spaces.
Okay, talk to the building coordinator, the building manager, and saying these need to stay up. And then little signs can be put up there. That's what we did in 3195, Lindsay's.
That's exactly, I was looking at that illustration and thinking, oh, I remember when.
And lots of duct tape.
Yeah. We cleared that with the building coordinator so that the custodial staff knows that this stuff stays up.
Thank you.
And I've never really had to deal with that issue, but I've been in a class where I was lecturing and the person right across the hall was lecturing louder than any activity I've ever done. So we called him the preacher man because he was loud. But I think it's basically, I come from a department where there's not many that do these type of activities. So I have had to, in departmental meetings and things like that, defend what I'm doing. But most of the faculty, when they see something that someone has used, they see the benefits of it, right? So even before the active learning, when we were starting to use WebAssign, I have the whole department, well not the whole, but a lot of the department is, I think that hurts them to do it on the computer. They should be doing it by paper and pencil, and we should do it on the chalkboard. These are for serious quotes from our
Mathematicians and chalkboards, man.
I
They're
love
serious business.
I love a chalkboard. But either way, another faculty member did it because he had a large class. And he's like, you know, those who did the work did really well. And then I could see those who didn't do their homework. I was like, remember, you were given homework before and you couldn't see it. So there's just, if they see it, they feel a little better.
So invite them to your class. Oh.
Yeah.
They can play too.
Yeah.
You had a question earlier
too.
too. You should join us.
I just think that's it too. I think there's some suspicion of all of the smiles in the classroom. I think some more traditional faculty members are suspicious.
You had a question too, I'm sorry.
Back to the planning the active learning course and your suitcase full of activities. Are there resources where you can get those ideas, or do you just make them up yourself?
For the activities themselves?
Yeah, I mean, is
or
there like
planning?
resources that you guys use to pull from to get ideas for these different active learning things that you can do?
There are things out there, for
There's
sure.
a lot of really great blogs.
Do you guys just
Lot of
already
great
know
blogs.
how to do them? Or how
If
did
you're a
you
friend on
learn?
Facebook with Big EO Center, they post.
They push a lot of stuff.
Yeah, to you. Our friend Vivka, she pushes a lot to you too. They're great.
Not many Vivkas on Facebook.
Yes, friend Vika, follow Big EO. We do also have some active learning workshops that we try to do that help people. One of the other things that was mentioned about the planning and the process and getting off the ground on this, right, is we do have summer learning course redesigns that you guys can go to the Big EO website and you can apply to participate, and we accept those. A number of them have been through that process as part of the help of learning how to do all this. And so I'll show you, I'll bring the website up at the end and make sure that that's up too. So, but then you can go through that process with a cohort of other faculty members in the summer through the Big EO Center too. So that's really helpful.
It's awesome, and I think,
And there's passion. I think that your question might be discipline specific. Is that what you mean? Yeah. So
Which discipline are you in?
there are lots of things that are specific to physics that EMEA has, all sorts of resources that he could tell you about if you're interested in physics. But a lot of these communities actually have listservs also. So like there's a chemistry education listserv, and sometimes people post things, and then you can search the archives and see what kinds of things people are doing. There's all sorts of promotional.
And it doesn't mean that you must only look to others for ideas and resources. You can come up with crazy ideas of your own, like I have been doing, and it's been successful. It's percolating. And Raj mentioned something like the 70-20-10 rule. You want to talk about that, or? Because I'm going to mess this up, but it's a nice thing that you should talk
Sure.
about.
So the 70-20-10 rule is just a rule for strategic change. It actually comes from the business world. But when you're doing something, changing something in your classroom, spend 70% of your time continuing to do what's been effective, so keep that base, right? 20%, that's a decent, maybe one standard deviation variation from what you've been traditionally doing, and then do 10% of some really crazy stuff. This high risk, high return, so that you can throw away and then try again. So it's a good rule of thumb as you're looking to make change like that.
Yeah, and that's the model that I'm following with the kind of slow change of this core course that I'm working through. Also, the phrases that we're using, problem-based learning, active learning, cooperative learning, these are kind of industry standard phrases that you can plug in plus your discipline and easily find stuff. University of Michigan Center for Teaching and Learning is a big one, full of lots of stuff, and that pops up very easily even if you just type in active learning.
And one really good book that's been around for a long time is called CATS, if you like CATS, Classroom Assessment Techniques, and it's got a lot of these other things you guys are talking about. They all derive, but there's some derivative of the other from Angela and Cross's book from about almost 20 years ago now, CATS, Classroom Assessment Techniques.
I also want to kind of speak to, in that transitional period, that 20%, 10%, I kind of didn't do that. I went 90%. I jumped off the cliff. But either way, that 20%, 10% that you're doing, I think that it's been my thing that you need to really buy into what you're doing. If you go in there and you're nervous about that this may not work, then it's definitely not going to work because they're going to feed off of that. And another thing is they have to learn how to be active. So the first time that you ask them to talk to each other, they might just kind of just stare and not say a word. But if you kind of work with them to get them to see that it's okay, you can actually talk to each other and you don't have to just look for me for the answers.
I would say don't do 50-50. That's what I did my first semester. Kind of gonna do it, kind of not. And at the end, my student evaluations were like, she just stood up at the front of the room. And I was like, that was active learning. You had a chance to work on your papers. It was, in my mind, we were doing active learning, but because I hadn't really prepped the class, they thought I was just standing there. So it was kind of a miscommunication. The next semester, though, I led with a bunch. You probably all have seen like the TED Ed talks, the Carol Dweck growth mindset. I start every class, no matter what level it is, with that growth mindset. So that throughout the class, I'm like, if you're feeling frustrated or uncomfortable, you're learning, that's great. We want to feel that way. We don't want to feel frustrated. So it becomes a way to have that conversation over and over and over again. And Amaya has actually put it up on a video now where they can take a quiz, which I'm sure you can share that link. If anybody else wants access to that growth mindset entry quiz or whatever, email me. You can email me too, but
We'll write it on the whiteboard when we're done.
Yeah, I think if you really make them focus about, think about their learning, no matter what the subject is, they buy into it a lot more. And if you show that you're trying to do things that you believe will help them to learn more, even if it doesn't go over well, I feel like they respect the fact that you're putting in this extra effort, in redesigning it and being thoughtful about it.
Can I add a comment? If you're going to implement anything in your class and you're not sure how it's going, because what I get from these faculty panels is that sometimes it's trial and error, sometimes you have to just take a little step. Diane, who's the director here, talks about modification, make slide modification, no matter like she said about don't do 50-50. Whatever you do, once you start implementing the classes, we have a program we have here that's called a small group instructional feedback from the HGIF. You can bring us in and say, okay, let's see what my students are saying about the things I am doing. And it's very non-judgmental. Our modus operandi is specific, actionable, and it's kind. We want to help you improve. And the next HGIF for this semester is going to be between February 22nd and March. So just a couple of weeks from now. And it's very, very easy, and it's very transparent. We're there to help you. That's why. We know you're already doing a great job. Just when you want to do it better, you want to implement something, maybe from all these resources, maybe you got it from the Michigan, or from our side, or from somewhere else that you've done and want to implement it, we can come in and help you do confidential student evaluations.
I think another thing to that people were talking about was when you're deciding that you're wanting to do something active in the classroom, it's good to do something early. Their first day, the first day is kind of a review time and a get to know each other time. So I use the cheesy little icebreakers and things like that just to get them to realize that there might be more.
It sets the precedent for the class.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing I'll say is, I think we each have different strategies about how much transparency we want to give to our students about that we're trying this for the first time. And that's a kind of judgment call on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it's part of your persona. Because I'm very much open with my students about this is why we do what we do, and this is why I'm doing what I do. I also have tenure, so there's that's part of the freedom that it comes with it. I have found in the past it's useful sometimes to not tell them it's the first time I've done something, which is where the 70-20-10 thing, if most of the stuff is old hat, then you can it's not slipping in vegetables because it's supposed to be a more pleasant and more engaging way of teaching, but it allows you the kind of authoritative base to do a few things that you might feel uncomfortable with. I also just want to say small group instructional feedback is not just when you're trying something new for the first time. The first time I brought them in was when I thought a group of my students were looking at me funny and I couldn't figure out why. Turns out they liked me the most. there's a lot of reasons why you might take the 20 minutes, the small group instructional feedback.
And you can find that on the website for the
Can you say something towards if you prepared your department that you were going to do this, and if so, how did you prepare them? So not the students, but I don't know, your department chair.
The dean told my department chair I was doing it. So, no, basically, the way that it happened with our department is I'm the pre-calculus coordinator, but I'm also a lecturer, so I don't have tenure. And there are some of my faculty who don't like the fact that I'm a lecturer. They think that we're out to steal all their jobs. And so there's, you know, some politics and stuff that go along with it. So there are some of the faculty who, whenever I would say that I was going to try something new, were talking to the department chair, what are you doing? What is she doing? Why is she doing this? She's supposed to be teaching. She has 200 of these Math 1000 people to get through, and she's not going to do it if she's like making them play in class. And so basically there was a couple of grants that we went through and tried to write, and they weren't. And so the dean talked to me about another opportunity. And so I talked to him and kind of told him some of my ideas. And then he talked to the chair for us. And then after it was, we kind of did it on the down low the first time. So basically I was teaching and I was getting to know other people who would be resources outside of my department. And working on these, and then after the first class, we went through and it was successful because I liked it and I was going to do it again. We then brought it to the department meeting and said, here's some results of how this has gone and here's some things that are being done. So it was kind of, it was sneaky.
Ours was direct, and so I'm 1.5 years old here, and so during my interview I told them that this is what I do and this is how I do things, and when they selected me, that meant that they wanted to go this way. And then I came in and I co-taught with one person and then with another person, and then they all were on board, and then slowly just propagated, and now someone who's been teaching for 41 years is now doing active learning in physics, making his own videos and doing active learning in physics.
Was it the first time?
The first time.
Wow,
yeah.
That's brilliant. It's a long time
Yes,
to
first
make a
time.
change. You've seen it all when you taught 41 years.
I was wondering if you could comment on the, besides the engagement in class, the outcome. Do you see better, at the end of the course, better outcomes from the students, better, I don't know, grades or better understanding?
So I can comment on physics part, and so depending on how your assessment looks like, so if your exam questions come straight from the homework, then you don't really see a difference in the final exams. But we have the standardized exams, FCI and FMC and all those national standardized exams, and in those exams we do see a higher gain for those who have been through active learning than those who have not.
And then how is the assessment different when you...
The assessment might be the same, so we might not be able to get that difference through standard exams, final exams or common exams or whatever you have. But then on MCATs, for example, or all the standardized national tests, you see a definite improvement. So that means that more learning has happened, but then maybe we can find different ways of developing our exams that might also amplify that effect.
And
But the assessment are exactly the same type as...
It's more fundamental, it's more testing your learning than overall learning.
Some courses change their assessment and do maybe more project-based or group-based work. Others still do the tests because they're required to, right? It's part of a program. We do have a biology group that went through the active learning change, and across all of the semesters that they changed it, they have seen an increase of 6 points per every test per course for the last 3 semesters. And that's in the 2 to 3 different ones where they do it with different instructors. So it's not, they're doing the same kind of work, but it's different instructors. And those instructors are all seeing an increase of 6 points increase on the curve, all the way from the bottom to the top, according to not only their previous students, but also the students that are in the courses currently that are not doing active learning. So there is, it's not always a huge gain, but even if the assessments are similar, there is a gain.
We had some data from last semester. We do a uniform final, and we found kind of what Amaya was saying, that with the uniform final, that basically it matched. There was really no difference. But then when you go back and you look at their test scores throughout the semester, which had a little bit more of that thinking type question instead of just straight plug in a 2, f of 2 is equal to what, that they were scoring higher throughout the semester and learning things more. And I've also anecdotally noted it this next semester. Those who have returned know the information that we covered the semester before.
And we can do a longitudinal study where we see if the students who did better in the math thing do better in the physics, which is basically application of what they learn in math course.
Yeah, Rush.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, in terms of assessment of active learning, since you are really affecting the ways in which students learn, a huge part of this may not show up immediately in that course, right? And I think there's a lot of really good data, especially out of NC State, where the effects were really seen. So, GNS students with calculus doing better in physics, the physics students doing better in engineering classes, and so on and so forth. So that's why we really need an institutional view of these kinds of issues. One course may or may not tell you something that's measurable, right? It's there, but it may just not manifest itself because we're not smart enough at designing our assessments to be able to pull that out.
Yeah, I'm starting an IRB this semester to track, I'm tagging my freshmen from last semester where we did the active learning and really took this kind of integrative learning approach where they were pulling in artifacts from their physics classes and reflecting on them in a composition course. So I'm going to track them to see how they compare in terms of retention rates and overall scores and what they say about their learning experience versus other students have had.
And another thing,
in 4 years I can maybe answer.
And another thing with that is, for me personally, I didn't choose to do it because I was hoping for better scores. I started it and I got addicted to it and I like it. It makes teaching more enjoyable when you can go in there and they're smiling and doing something instead of just staring at you. That's so much better.
So many people are afraid with active learning that the outcomes will be so much less, that even if you're able to show them that the outcomes, the scores at the end are the same, I think you're going to get a lot of buy-in that way. Because what we hear is you can't cover as much, you can't possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be assessment-based. You have to think of your outcomes before you start thinking about the activity, and then you have to think of a way you're going to assess the outcome, and then you can think of like the creative, engaging way that you're going to have them achieve those outcomes. And I think earlier you had asked a question about how do you start with it. In the redesign session, we read this fabulous, it was a PDF file, DFINC, I can't remember.
Yes,
but what is it, strategies for promoting student, it's, if you just Google DFINC, or there's a YouTube video, strategies for active learning, something like that.
I have it.
Creating
You have a question?
That's it, significant.
I use the flip model in my teaching, and so my quote-unquote lecture, or the dissemination of the content outside of the classroom, I use, readings or videos. Sometimes I use VoiceThread, and I was wondering if there are any other tools that you guys use when you are delivering your outside the classroom content.
Yes, sir.
So we have been doing our own videos, and so the fun thing that we discovered the first time we did just videos was that student viewership just drops off. And so they come to class, we think, whoa, they have all watched the video, and then they come in, and so it depends on how you make the video and all those things also. And so we saw a big drop off in student engagement on the videos pre-class. And so when they come into class, they are not as prepared as we think they are. And so we have started doing these PowerPoint mix things where you can embed quizzes into the videos. So you make a video, stop someplace and ask a quiz on it, And so they cannot even skip it because the question is based on that part of the video, so they go back and forth and they learn. And the viewership is more than 100% of the length of the video. And they spend, we have analytics on to how much time they spend on every slide, how much time they spend thinking about the quiz and all those kind of things. And so the engagement has gone really up, and when they come to class, they are now very prepared. So, oh, this is from that quiz in the pre-class video.
You did that with PowerPoint, you said?
PowerPoint, yes. So there is this nice little thing, it's a free plugin to PowerPoint, where you can actually do recordings, video recordings, audio recordings. You can write, mix, PowerPoint mix, Office mix. And it's a fantastic tool available to all of us. Basically.
We're using it too, chemistry.
Yeah, so now everyone's doing it. So, yes.
How long are the videos?
How long?
How long are they?
Okay. So the other thing is, so the longer the videos, the quicker the fall off. But right now I have 30-minute videos, 26-minute videos, and they still watch all of it. But if you have passive videos, then up to 5 to 7 minutes is kind of the limit. But if you have interactivity in there, then it seems from experience, they might still complain, but they actually do all the work.
And although your quizzes probably break up that longer 30
That is
into
true.
the more
Yes.
chunkable kind of theory
More
anyway,
chunkable.
so you're still in that range.
I've used videos as well, but I like this one because I have questions at the end, and like I said, they just skip through it. I like interactive things they touch and move around, so I use GeoGebra, and I'm sure it can be used in other things. I know it can be used in other things because they've got some really neat stuff built in here, but these are some of the ones I've built. I have like little things where they boil water, and it's basically a touch and move things around. So it's just like animations and stuff that they can touch and change things. But this is it's a big project throughout the world. It was started in Nigeria. And they have all sorts of applets that people can use. So there's tessellations, there's shadows, mirrors and shadows and things like that. And it's just basically, they can work and play and touch it.
And yeah, so I love GeoGebra also. But what we also do is if you're doing motion related stuff, again physics based mostly, then there's what Raj got up for us, is nice tracking software. So you can actually take a video in class of, you throw a ball, take a video of it, and then you can get it on that tracker system and then mark the ball at every instance, then you can determine a whole bunch of information from that video. So it's a completely active thing, and instead of actually doing it on paper, physics is everywhere, it's all around you, not on paper. So you can actually do that in the class, and the students enjoy it a lot.
And just again, you don't have to have all of these things to play with it, even though I do want to borrow that.
Yes, there is one for you waiting.
The other thing that we have, as we should have mentioned at the beginning when everyone was still here, we have an active learning happy hour every third Thursday of the month. And it happens at Piccolo over in the hotel, Auburn. So it's nice and close by, but yet off campus, so we can,
drink.
Well, not everybody drinks, but
Be happy.
but it's happy. We'd be happy. You can just relax just a little bit, breathe. You can come and share ideas and talk and intermix with all these people that are doing all of this and bring more questions and share more experiences. And
So I should say that the Active Learning Happy Hour is fantastic. That's where we meet people from other disciplines who are interested in the same thing. And we forge partnerships and collaborations. In fact, English and physics, do you see in the relationship, we are actually collaborating on projects in active learning in both our classes. And so it happened at the
That's
active
awesome.
learning.
And observing Amaya teach a large lecture was really helpful for me to have that confidence to do active learning in a large lecture. And I think going to observe professors in different kinds of fields is a really good way to rethink about your material in a different kind of way, because physics is convergent where you're trying to get an answer, English is divergent where you're trying to, explore all the possibilities. So it's really different in terms of outcomes, but I think it's a really good place to get ideas and inspiration.
And so when we combine, we reach that convergence from a diverging viewpoint. that's helping.
By the way, when you go and observe somebody else teach active learning, that is also a good moment to write a letter of recommendation for them because you understand what they're doing in the classroom. Versus some of those old fuddy-duddies that Mary was talking about earlier. I said fuddy-duddy. You know, who might observe you and going, well, nothing happened because the students were talking the whole time, so nothing happened. And so keep that in mind. I'm always thinking of ways to protect you, you know, because I understand that this is a major risk for you to go into this direction. In some departments, like in physics, it no longer is necessarily a risk, but I expect there are some departments where people are still kind of going, this is fad, this is going to go away, let's not do this.
Are there any like hang-ups that anyone has to active learn, or you know, like things that we haven't covered, or not that I have answers, but that's
It's a good question.
something to talk about.
I was going to say that, you know, we talked about observing people and looking for ideas and things. I think situations and things like this, all the stuff that the Big EO Center does and this panel here, kind of, hopefully it's helping to realize that you're not all by yourself. And it's great to have colleagues, even if they're not in your department, are willing to talk about things and you know, help you work your way through any of this. I know I'm going back with a couple of ideas I've heard on the panel from others that are now going to be in my classroom.
Are there any last questions?
We should have done this as active learning, like just sat up here and like let you all.
Well, we thought about it, but the room got very filled.
Yeah,
And, which was exciting. We were really excited about that, because we thought about different groups of tables, and I was like, well, no, everybody won't fit. So, but that's an exciting challenge to have, so I'm really glad that everybody did come that participated. So thank all of you for coming. I hope that most of your questions were answered in a meaningful way. If you do have further questions, please feel free to get a hold of us, ask us anything. We may not know, but we do know experts around the campus who will hopefully know, or as a group can come up with answers that can help you out, because I'm sure there'll be things that you will think of as you leave here and go, aha! And that's great, that's what we're here for, is to help try to manage some of those. So we do have wonderful experts across this campus.
I've already had a request. What if, do you mind emailing the participants from today, the link to the debrief and to the video?
Absolutely.
Anything else anybody forgot that you want sent?
Yeah,
And some of the resources, maybe we'll grab some of those that we can share also. So that would be great. We'll be sure to do that, and we'll post some of them on the Big EO Facebook page as well.
To make it active, you should have everybody here send you something.
There you go.
I like that.
Now you have to check all your emails.
Yes. Well. Yeah. Random. Yes, so yes, please feel free to be as active as you want to be with us. And like I said, Vika, you can look her up on Facebook. She has some fabulous information and shares on a regular basis and is an expert in this as well. So probably the foremost expert at this point. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to give it to you.
I don't know if my students this semester would agree with that.
So, well, we're not going to let them say it. So they're not here, they don't get to say that. So yes, wonderful. If there is food left, please feel free to take some as you go out the door. Again, thank you. And if there's anything that you think of that you want to know more about in general, please also let us know that, because we can build more sessions based on some of those things as we move forward too. So. And we're always welcome to do the SJS, as he said, or consultations or anything that we can help you guys with. So, all right, thank you guys all for coming. I hope you have a fabulous afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Catlett.
Yeah, we have students have a different